Don't eat that, don't eat that, don't have that artificial sweetener, don't you dare have that sucralose. Look, I could rattle off a bunch of things that are harming your gut, and it's just gonna be like every other thing on the internet. But what about the big picture? Let's look forward. Let's look at what lifestyle things are actually affecting your gut and your microbiome way more than you think, outside of just cherry picking certain things to demonize. Let's talk about what is truly impacting your gut day over day in a compounding fashion. The first one we need to address, and you may want to click off this video because you're going to be upset that I even mention it, is exercise. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to exercise 3 times per week doing your aerobic Jane Fonda workouts. That's not what I'm about, all right? I want to give you some breakdown and just you take it to the bank and do whatever you want with it. There was a study that was published in the Journal of Gut, okay? This gut journal study took a look at 40 rugby players, professional rugby players, versus 29 just regular people. Okay, they did what they could to match everyone for age, for size, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what they did is they wanted to look at their fecal samples and see what their microbiome looked like. They found that athletes had a significantly more diverse microbiome. You know, and not a huge surprise because yeah, they're active, maybe they eat better and stuff like that. But they also found that there was a big change in their species abundance. This is important because as we evolve in the world of microbiome research, we start to see that there are specific species that do specific things and are correlated with specific things like being lean or being more active or better carbohydrate metabolism. There was one species in particular that's hugely associated with gut barrier function and how strong and supportive the gut is, that was hugely increased in athletes over non-athletes. Okay, this could very well be why we see that athletes typically have lower levels of inflammatory markers, lower levels of inflammation. You see, we always think maybe it's just happening at a cellular level, maybe just, you know, whatever. There's different cellular functions, biochemistry that's allowing us to modulate inflammation in an athlete. But maybe it has more to do with the microbiome. Because if we have a microbiome that supports the gut, then we have less inflammatory things coming into the bloodstream from the gut. So in a compounding fashion, longer term, it probably makes more sense to think that it's the microbiome that's causing this more powerful positive result. The cool thing is that this whole body of research was confirmed additionally by the Journal of Microbiome. They looked at cyclists and they found that 30 out of 33 cyclists ended up having this same abundance of this one particular microbe, right? Showing that, okay, there probably is a very strong association between exercise and having this particular bacteria. There was another study published in the journal Gut that demonstrated that species function changed. So what that means is that people that exercised more had more species that metabolized carbohydrates and metabolized proteins and encouraged protein synthesis. I don't know if that's resonating entirely because I probably didn't get super excited about it enough, but what that means is that by exercising, we're literally changing our microbiome to burn carbs more, just at rest, and to build more muscle and synthesize protein at rest. That is huge. That is the compounding long-term effect that we need. Now, intensity matters too. There's some studies that demonstrate that when you exercise at a higher intensity, you generate more lactate, and lactate fuels VEILLONELLA, a specific kind of bacteria, which is largely supported with athletic performance. But anyhow, we can associate that all we want. Let's move into the next one. The next one is a lack of diversity. And before you click off this video because you think it's going to be boring, let me just instill upon you how important this is. Diversity is everything. People are going to tell you that you should eliminate this and eliminate that. Certain communities are going to say don't eat vegetables for this and that. Look, the more that we shrink our microbiome, the less that we are able to deal with external things. So if you start limiting your foods to so much of a degree that you cannot process other foods that you take in, of course you're gonna demonize those foods. If you only eat steak and then suddenly you have a bean and that bean makes you feel like garbage because your microbiome can't deal with it, of course you're gonna hate the bean and you're gonna have a vendetta and you're gonna let everyone know about it. It's just like the angry person that is sitting in their house that never leaves their house, but they sit in their armchair complaining about everyone on the internet or complaining about everyone on TV because they're not worldly and they're not diverse. Their world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and you can't communicate with those people because their world is this big. But you talk to people that actually have a diversity, well, then it makes a little more sense. Same thing with our gut. Now, we're learning certain species do certain things, indeed. But we know right now the most important thing we can lean into is diversity. And over the last 50 years, we have lost so much diversity with processing food. 75% of our food that we consume comes from 12 plant species and 5 different animal species. That's it. And there's like 300,000 different edible plant species that we could be consuming, right? So we're getting a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. Not to mention, then we add antibiotics into the mix, then we add emulsifiers. Look, there are countless studies that demonstrate that a diverse microbiome is probably better. Okay, one study published in PNAS looked at an African village that ate a bunch of different diverse things compared to the standard European diet, standard European cultures. Huge difference in Bacteroidetes, which is associated with good metabolism and being lean. The African culture had skyrocketed levels of Bacteroidetes and low levels of Firmicutes. Firmicutes is associated with obesity in a lot of different studies, okay? So we've seen that, plus a multitude of other things. Now, I could say go out and eat a lot of different things. What I personally do is I take a good probiotic, and that's about the best that I can do outside of eating diverse things. The one that I recommend, just so that you know, is called Seed. It's down below in the description. They did sponsor this video, full disclaimer, but at the same time, it is the one that I use, and that's why I established a relationship with them. Amazing technology, highly recommended. There is a special link. You can save 15% off of the Seed probiotic down below by using that link in the description. If you check them out, you'll see the technology is really intriguing because they use this cool delivery where they actually have a capsule inside of a capsule. So it's a smaller capsule that's inside a bigger capsule so that it can sort of get through to the proper stages of our gut so that we're promoting the potential good colonization, right? The microbiome is wild, but Seed is all about furthering microbiome research. The amount of money they put into productive research in this category, how they are connected in the world of microbiome, we're going to see a lot of cool science coming from them in the first place. But in the meantime, for us people that are just trying to do the best to live our best lives, I highly, sincerely recommend them. Check them out down below in the description. Okay, there's one other that I need to talk about that's super important. And that is your sleep. Now, here's what's wild. We can't control our sleep. I get it. Like, there's some things we can control. There's some things we can't. I suffer from a lot of insomnia issues myself, and I work through different things to correct them, okay? But I'm not perfect. Now, what we are finding now is that the microbiome and the cells in our gut have an independent circadian rhythm outside of our own circadian rhythm. And what that means is that that independent circadian rhythm can get disrupted. Now, there's a study that was published in the journal Molecular Metabolism that took a look at some subjects. Okay, what they did is they disrupted their sleep for 2 days, just partial disruption, and then they had normal sleep for 2 days. Well, immediately after having 2 days of partial sleep disruption, huge changes in their microbiome. That Firmicutes, Bacteroidetes, like, fat bacteria versus lean person bacteria, huge shift in that. All of a sudden, Firmicutes, the obese bacteria, went way up, and Bacteroidetes went way down. All it took was 2 nights. Now, that can also get corrected pretty quick with good sleep. The problem is that our microbiome, once it gets off rhythm, it messes up our rhythm, messes up our sleep-wake cycles. It's like having a kid that wakes up at 4 a.m. ready to go, that's gonna mess up your sleep cycle, right? Well, your microbiome is waking up at 4 a.m. It's waking you up at 4 a.m. and messing up your cycle. So how do we restore that? Well, once again, diversity is very, very key, but also good sleep hygiene to get yourself into a rhythm is gonna be probably one of the best ways. Anyhow, as always, breaking it down, giving you things that you can associate and bring into play to live your best life possible. I'll see you tomorrow.